Hi, so LLMs have just broken into the scene in last year when ChatGPT released their initial model in terms of what they were doing for large language model. The generative AI has been there for quite some time, and we've been seeing generative AI go through various phases, whether it was imagery, which was being used for generative adversarial networks, or it was the techniques to generate language using techniques like recurrent neural networks or LSTM. I think what ChatGPT showed, and the reason why LLM just broke open into the field, was that language could also now be created in terms of human premise or human perspective. And that was very, very important for generative AI. Up till now, we have seen that language could be created using certain other techniques, but it was not as good. And LLMs are generally large language models. So basically what they do is they have an ability to train themselves on very large language structures, almost the entire Wikipedia and so on and so forth. And they control the way the language is spoken, and they inherently understand the language. And I think that's the importance of LLM in Gen AI. Now, this wonderful world of LLM and Gen AI have shown massive usage, not just in terms of corporate, but things that we can do for society as well. For example, LLMs do understand the language. So a large part of the work that the enterprises are doing also contains a lot of unstructured data, whether it is data that they receive from call center, whether it's data that they receive from emails, or data that is normally through chat in terms of what they get, or emails. Now LLMs have an inherent capacity to understand this language and maybe act or give that corporate or that enterprise the ability to understand and do analysis in terms of what customers are talking about. From a societal perspective, I think LLM and generally Gen AI has been used for long purposes and for large purposes. For example, in Tech Mahindra Makers Lab, we are responsible for finding the therapeutic molecule against COVID-19. This was, of course, work that was done in 2021 and 22. And during that time also, phases of Gen AI, for example, using genetic algorithms, we had created some protein structures in terms of how proteins could act as ligands and could attack the virus as well. And we were successful in finding one small molecule as well. There are certain other advantages. For example, dialect. And if you consider India as one of those countries which has got 1645 official dialects and people speak these dialects as well, it's very important that these LLMs and Gen AI understand the dialect so that they can be utilized for n number of purposes. It could be rural finance. Imagine a farmer who's actually there in the village and he wants to take a loan, and rather than calling up, he's actually talking to a Gen AI or an AI system which understands their language. Similarly, consider machines like tractors, and they suddenly become conversational. When a problem occurs in a tractor, it's Gen AI or LLM based structures that are actually telling the person what the real problem is before they even pick up a phone and call up their retail agents as well and ask them to come down to their place. So generally, generative AI and LLM have a huge scope. Now, within the IT world itself, we are seeing Gen AI and LLM produce a very different kind of a developer now. And I had coined this term called neuro-linguistic programmer some 4 or 5 years back, where the ideology of a human being was to just understand what the AI produces and then do the next steps as well. You have GitHub Copilot, you have Cohere as models who are coming up, who are helping developers to become even better. Of course, there are guardrails in terms of what we can do with Gen AI, because there's also a lot of hallucination that gets produced from Gen AI as well and LLM. So we of course have to be mindful of that. But in general, they are helping increase productivity of not just the IT and technology folks, but also making sure that a large number of businesses and enterprises who are dealing with customers take advantage of these LLMs and Gen AI based systems as well. So Tech Mahindra has been very actively involved in Gen AI and LLM right since the beginning. And I think our story goes back about 3 or 4 years back when we've been dealing with LLM and Gen AI. Now, the very unique thing that we are doing now is we are making our own LLM from grounds up. Of course, this was a challenge that came to us. I think most of you would remember when Sam Altman came to India, the challenge was, can Indians actually produce an LLM of their own? And the challenge was whether it could be done under $10 million as well. CP, of course, took that challenge on Twitter, and that challenge is now being covered by Makers Lab and my team in terms of producing an LLM. Now, what is this LLM? Now, we thought about it. How can we create an LLM? There are LLMs made in Hindi. We can use a already open source material like, for example, Llama or Falcon or ChatGPT. We decided to go grounds up. And when we decided to go grounds up, we also wanted to make sure that we cover the entire expanse in which the language is spoken. So we took one language called Hindi. And Hindi is spoken in India in 37 plus different ways. There are certain dialects which are also very, very unique for a Hindi speaking person or a native Hindi speaking person in this country. Languages like or dialects like Khorta, Kurmali, Panch Pargania are spoken by about 100 to 200,000 people only. And these are languages and dialects which are getting extinct or they are in the endangered list of languages. So our model, and we started building this model about 6 months back. Our model was basically, the vision was to take care of these dialects and these languages. Now, where is the data? The maximum amount of data that you could find digitally anywhere in the world about Hindi was roughly close to 2.8 billion tokens. That's extremely low. If you consider, languages like English, etc., there are tokens which are available in trillions. So we had to collect a lot of data. This data got collected when we actually sent a team of people in the north, in the Hindi speaking part of this world, and they collected languages from UP, from Bihar, from Madhya Pradesh. We also had a portal where you could do and come Bhasha, you could come and do Bhasha Dan as well, in terms of putting your own Bhasha, in terms of putting your own dialect that you wanted to get registered in this particular system. Secondly, when the data got collected, we found that there were so many biases in terms of ethical bias, racial bias, religious bias, political bias. So we had to find a system which would automate and find out these biases for us. I'm very happy to say that we actually created an NLP based toolkit, a toolkit where you actually send some text and it will automatically find out all sorts of biases in that system. And it's up to the person who's actually annotating it to remove that bias as well. Third was obviously this data was not enough. So we wanted to collect a large amount of data otherwise as well. So we followed the Falcon principle. So Falcon uses an open source data set called Pile. And Pile is important because it is interspersed with all sorts of data. It has got data around law, around books, etc. And we started translating that data, and that gave us about good amount of token. I'm very happy to say that today we have a pre-trained model in Indus Ready, which has got 539 million parameters, has used 14 people as a resource, was built in 6 months, and it is a very unique LLM because it only includes Hindi-based tokens. It doesn't have any English. I feel that when you actually intersperse these tokens as well, the language gets muddied. We did not stop there. While Indus will be released in April, we are also working with our partners in Indonesia, where we have actually done a Bahasa-based model, which will get released very soon internally in their beta phase as well. The process remained the same, the template remained the same. So Tech Mahindra is at the cutting edge in terms of dealing with LLM, producing their own LLM from grounds up, but also making sure that these LLMs are worthwhile for businesses to utilize further down the line when they fine tune some of them.